came into this field. I want to know a little bit about you and how you came to be the founder of Decode Age.
No, absolutely. I mean, that itself is like my personal moonshot. So it
Mm,
starts way back when I was 15. So I just got introduced to a topic called genetics in my school curriculum. And thanks to everything, I had access to internet back then. So I started reading a lot about genetics and got into some scientist stories like Gregor Mendel and James Watson, learned about what is DNA, how genetics function. And since then, like my interest has peaked in this particular, the whole biological, biotechnological paradigm. My interest peaked at that time. Now, unfortunately, 1.5 year down the line from there, when I was about 16, I lost two of my uncles in the same year, both because of cancer. Right
mm,
now, that kind of hit me personally in a way that why is this disease such a big threat to the whole humanity? And then the incidence was constantly increasing. So I thought I want to solve something big for humanity. I started seeing what is cancer. I planned my education around everything around that cancer, right? Now, fast forward to my master's degree in when I was in UK. So I was studying my master's in drug design and biomedical sciences, and I had just come out of bioinformatics. So
mm,
during that time, in one particular lecture that I got from a professor called David Mincher, whom I had back then, and he taught us something about telomeres. So we all know that we have DNA, right? But each cell has this hanging thread of DNA at the end, right? So if we imagine a shoelace, the shoelace has a cover, a plastic cover, like kind of an anklet on the top. As soon as you break that, your shoelace kind of frays away, right? It completely dismantles. And telomere was something like that for the cell. And the
mm,
idea that was taught was that the length of telomere decides the lifespan of a cell, right? So that was a striking point for me. And then he talked a lot about aging. Now, slowly I came to realize that a lot of disease, like if we were living in the 60s today, Sanjukta, we would be worried about hygiene, we would be worried about infectious disease. कि मुझे cholera हो जाएगा, मैं मर जाऊंगा, right? So that
yeah,
was the story back then. But that's
and
not the
tuberculosis,
story. Yeah,
right?
sorry.
Tuberculosis was the big thing. TB, tuberculosis was that
Right.
big breakthrough at that time. Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. So infectious disease and you were pretty much a goner back then. So average lifespan was around 35 to 40 back then. Today, if you see, that kind of infectious disease doesn't threat us anymore, unless except once in a decade, something like a COVID would come, which would pretty much shake our grounds on it. But we have
Mm,
readily controlled the infectious world. What we are today worried about, the biggest pandemic today, are diseases which are metabolic in order, right? Type 2 diabetes, your Parkinson's, your Alzheimer's, cardiovascular issues, rheumatoid arthritis, if we talk about, even so cancer, right? So this is your body going rogue after a certain period of time is why you are facing with these diseases. Now, what is
correct.
that process called? Why is it happening only after the age of 25, 30, or 35? Why is it not happening in very young individuals? So our body has a pre-programmed software to slowly deteriorate yourself. That's aging, right? That's what we call aging, and that's what we know aging of as of today. Now, as your body deteriorates, it gives space to these diseases to grow. The type 2 diabetes, what is it? It is a minor dysfunction in one of the pathways that was perfectly functioning well until a period of time. Then it went rogue. Similar with cancer, there are different theories. There's a mutation which accumulates over years, right? And then there are external factors which are triggering carcinogens. So each disease has aging at the cause of it, at the root of it, right? So now, then I started thinking, I came all the way so far for cancer, but now I realize that aging is much bigger than the cancer. The puzzle is much more complex. Of course, it's going to take years and decades to solve it, but progressive work has been done in the last 4 to 5 decades as well. So I think it gives us all a hope that if we control aging in some way or the other in the future, we will pretty much be controlling a lot of chronic diseases that we know of today. So this will be like penicillin was to the infectious world, aging would be to the aging, the a chronic disease world or the non-communicable disease world. So
Right.
that's how I got into aging.
Yeah.
No, my plan was to keep working in UK, but then COVID happened. So I came back to India, started figuring out what's happening in India. And I mean, there were a few pocket of labs and institutions that were working on it, but industry
Yeah.
was pretty much a naive, field, a blue ocean, back in 2020, if I talk about. So I saw some kind of a scope where, something which is at the edge of biotech and consumers could come up, which can build relationships with academia, industries, government, and take this science forward in India. So that's how I got into it, and that's what led to Decode Age.
Okay. So, so it's an Indian company. So did you raise funds for it? So it's a startup, and on LinkedIn, I mean, it's like the first, I think the first sort of longevity research startup in India. So I want to know a little bit about, are you collaborating with anyone? So is it a sort of like a startup that, give me an idea of how it's sort of working.
Right, absolutely. Now, I mean, when we started back in the market, like 2021, we officially incepted the company. Before that, the founders were still strategizing around what all we want to do, right? So the idea was always to, because the industry was very naive, because no one existed in this space, be it on the service provider side of things, be it on the product development side of things, or R&D side of things, we had a massive task to pretty much do it all because one is incomplete without the other, right?
Right.
I literally cannot sell you a supplement without telling you how it works through a test, right? And similarly, I can't sell you a test if I can't provide a solution for that problem that I'm testing for. That was obviously the one challenge. So today, if you see, Decode Age is on the consumer side of things as well, and on the back-end research collaboration side as well. Yes, on the consumer side, we have the services for personalization, helping, people choose the right tests and products for them to, see different parts of aging, what is involved, how can we control some of those and everything. So that's on the consumer side of things. But
Mm,
since I come from a science background and I am handling the science in this company, so I pretty much more of handle beyond product development, the R&D initiatives in the company. So
mm.
we do, so as of today, we collaborate with, universities like Indian Institute of Sciences. We have pharma companies like Dr. Reddy's, whom we work with on different disease. And
Okay.
yeah, I think there's an important nuance here that we miss out is that aging is too wide a field, and the number of techniques, the number of methods, the technologies, the kind of interventions, and the range of it is very high. Now,
Yeah.
not one company can do everything, right?
Right.
Yes, on the consumer front, we can still provide the solutions by collaborating with the right international partners, which is what we do. But our focus mostly is on something we call the microbiome. So
Microbiome.
aging, yeah, I mean, if you talk about the science of aging, then a common consensus is that there are 14 reasons why your body age, something we call hallmarks of aging in science, right? And my goal was to work on one of these hallmarks, and which is the microbiome. So our whatever we do in R&D initiatives is to go about the microbiome biomarker development, microbiome therapeutics development. That's what our research collaborations are more of based on.
Okay. Can you, sorry, can you give me an idea of, say, a person has gone to you? I want to know the process. So is it, obviously it sounds like you customize according to the person, the age and everything. Uh,
Hmm,
so if I today I come to you and
hmm.
say that I want to be a part of this and I want to be your, I don't know, client to, so go through that process. So what will be my steps? Like how will you go about it?
No, absolutely. I mean, see, obviously we do have products and tests on offer. A lot of our customers are very wise and knowledgeable, so they directly like to go for their own paradigms which they have built. But let's say if you are a completely naive person to this field or the biology of it or how it happens. So we have a clinic kind of a model, online clinic kind of a model. So we have in-house doctors and nutritionists trained for longevity biomarkers and longevity interventions. Now,
Mm.
what we do is we first get a initial consultation, get to know you kind of a call from the doctor, to see what kind of things you're suffering from, your symptoms, what are your goals and everything. Then we
Right.
go for a series of testing, which is usually either blood, a microbiome, something we call epigenetics these days. So these are the
Yeah.
different range of testing. Now, based on your profile, you will be given the right tests. And now each test has its own personalization paradigm, which eventually merges for you. We tell you
Oh.
end to end how to do, right? Right from when you wake up, what kind of workout would be good for you, to the point of how you should manage your eating habits and what foods are not good for you, what foods are good for you, how to quantify them in your everyday meals, what is the
Mm.
right protein intake, all these basics, plus some advanced technique, advanced things. I mean, there are a lot of IV clinics in India opening up for multivitamin IVs or deficiency IVs. So there's a
Right.
range of things that are happening in India, right? But I think we are trying to consolidate it all. And I mean, just like I said, we don't want to do everything. We always
Mm.
attract collaborations, people who have done better job than us in certain interventions or testing, collaborate with
Mm.
them and provide the best solution. So that's
Oh,
that's how it goes. Like there's a doctor and a nutritionist constantly in touch with you to design your entire protocol, and then you can
got
go forward with that.
okay, okay. So there's no biohacking involved in this.
It's a fancy word people like to use.
Yeah.
I stay away from that. I mean,
Okay.
everything that you do is biohacking, right?
Okay.
Everything. If you're taking the right supplement at the right time, that's a biohack,
Okay.
right?
So
Yeah.
I mean is are you changing so are you sort of changing blood components like you like a lot of companies I mean I've just this is just derived knowledge I've just read
Sure.
that plasma can be changed, blood plasma can be changed and put into your body for regeneration of different cells. So I'm just wondering if that is also part of this or this is more a integrative kind of a protocol.
No, right. I think one thing we really need to understand is that the global media has really, really hyped up this extreme technologies. But the thing
Yeah.
is that they are not human ready right now. Yes, in parts and parcels, people who are, very brave about their biology, they would go
Mm,
and do that experimentally. But, you know, it's not regulated at all,
yeah.
right? It's absolutely not regulated. So the right way to do it would be to develop it, regulate it, and then bring it out. That's what we do on the biotech side of things, right? We
Right.
also have a few, therapeutic techniques into the pipeline, but we want to go through the proper animal study route, the clinical study route, because
Correct.
otherwise what happens is that a lot of quacks will come up, you know.
Yeah.
Every now and then people will start injecting blood in their body and it's going to be ridiculous after a point. So it's
True.
not good for the field overall. So if you'll
True.
see, one of this misuse has been covered in a very good Netflix documentary. I don't know if it is Netflix documentary, but about the
Mm,
CRISPR gene therapy, right? So the gene therapies, the gene editing, people are doing it on their pets, their dogs and everything. So, and that is not regulated. So
yeah.
we don't want to get into a phase like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, can you tell me like about any particular case study? You don't have to name the person, but just for me to get an idea of how the process was and how what kind of things changed. Is there anybody that you can talk about?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think I take most pride in my eldest of the portfolio customers, because that's where the scope of change is maximum. you know
Right.
as a young
Right.
person who is in let's say late 20s or early 30s, right?
Mm,
These people, they would do certain things, but the effect will be very minute, not able to feel it. As soon as you cross that age of 65, people feel really good. So I'll take one
yeah.
example. I
Yeah.
mean, we had a legendary sports person of India who is now
Mhm.
almost 84, 85 years in age. And I
Oh
mean,
my
when
God.
he came to us, yeah, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
that
Yeah.
legendary. Yeah. So I'm
Okay.
talking about almost 84 years of age. So I think this was very initial days for us also. I think this was mid 2022. So I personally took up, because we did not have a solid team back then. So I personally took up that case and I was guiding him, you know. So
Okay.
throughout the whole thing, I mean, obviously I had doctors and all advising me, but then the
Mhm.
initial complaints were obviously for a 84-year-old what it is, you know, there's lethargy, there's the will to move has kind of decreased, you know, there's a few blood parameters here and there, there's a cardiovascular risk, you know, the abdominal fat is kind of growing, you know. So, but I mean, beyond the person's will, which he was very strong at, I mean, if I still meet him, I feel inspired that he really wants to live, you know. So
Yeah.
beyond that, you know, today, as of today, when I meet him, it's a
Mhm.
completely different story for him. You know, he took me out to lunch in a golf course once, you know, so he's at that level now. He's walking properly, he's climbing the stairs without putting his hand on the railing. The energy levels have kind of risen up. He's sleeping well, eating well. But I think, yeah, so there's a lot of improvement in his overall lifestyle.
What markers has that the biochemistry has also changed the blood markers and
Yes, yes,
okay.
yes. I think recently we got his blood test done, and I mean we also took his blood biological age, and he is almost 4 to 5 years younger than his actual age by his blood chemistry. So if you see
Wow.
his HbA1c is much more in control than what a 84-year-old would have. You know, his drugs
Right.
are only on for his cardiovascular risk and not for anything else. The
Mhm.
micronutrient levels are at optimal level right now. So vitamins level are at optimal. I
Okay.
mean, yeah. So the blood chemistry has changed. Of course, that is what reflects in a human body. You can't feel good without being actually good. So I think that's the reflection.
Wow. Amazing. So Darshit, so having worked in this field now for these few years, say 3, 4 years, right?
Mm.
What do you think are the challenges unique to India when it comes to, making longevity a reality, right? Like recently, I was talking to, Dr. Professor Andrew Scott. So he has written this book called The Longevity Imperative.
I'm
So
aware.
his view is like the helicopter view of policy and governance and what can be done. So. Uh, I'm just wondering, aging is also so cultural, right? How we treat the elderly. India hasn't been pretty, pretty, I mean, we haven't been really friendly to the elderly in terms of policies and infrastructure. But uh, as someone, as, as someone who's in this field, who's trying to change parameters, what are the challenges that is unique to India in terms of
Right.
people coming in and actually doing it, going through it?
Mm, mm, mm. No, absolutely. I mean, are you in for a lengthy answer? Because I always have a lot of thoughts around this, right? So, see, my point is we look at a country, you know, in a Europe and say that, okay, the longevity in Spain is affected by these factors, right? It's very easy to do that. In India, there's a matrix, right? If you look at the matrix, we have 28 states, okay, and pretty much each one of them is as good as a country in how they behave and what they are, their environment, the food, and everything, right? So that's 28 columns for you right away in terms of matrix, okay? Then you put age groups in it, right? So this is a very simple 2D matrix I'm showing you, and still the permutation combinations are endless, right? With the age groups, if I put 5 year bracket. So it's just when I talk about, so I always look at the scientific challenge, the geopolitical challenge, which is policies and everything. And then there is the consumer awareness, I mean the market challenge itself. Now, if I first focus about the science, you know, what are the challenges in the science? I mean, it gets too complex, you know, at one point,
Mhm.
because the thing is, science depends on a few methodological practices. You know, cohorts are very important. What kind of people are participating in the study? What are the age groups, their preconditions, and everything, right?
Right.
The second biggest challenge is the geography where they live in and the amount of data available from their environment. So that itself is a challenge for us. And the third is tracking down of these right individuals. I'll give you a very brief example. So we started a centenarian project back in 2023, I mean mid 2023. So we were starting to collect data around people who were living 100 years and above, right, in
Right.
India, to understand what are their biological secrets to longevity. I happened to go into one of the international conferences where centenarians were being discussed, right? One thing I realized from that, that your study doesn't get published until you have a proof that that person is a centenarian. And the allowed proof is that either the birth certificate or the school passing certificate, right? So these were the valid proof for a study to get published in centenarians. Imagine in the most remotest village of Manipur, where we know the centenarians live, right? There are a lot of centenarians in Manipur. There are a lot of centenarians in pockets of India, right? So in remote villages of Manipur, the concentration of centenarians is high. But how do I reach them? Without the right government support, the right local government support. If I reach them, do they have the documents to prove that they are centenarians? For example, the 126-year-old, Shri Swaminanda, the Padma Shri Swaminanda, right? We do have the Aadhaar card for him, but the international societies do not accept that as a proof, right? So I have his data, I can't publish it, right? So these are some challenges that we face in science on an everyday level because of the complexity of the nation. Second thing, healthy individuals. What is longevity? If I have to track aging, and if I have to tell you in the future that you'll be healthy until this age, then I need someone in that age group in the healthy area to compare with you. Tell me in 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s in India, how many healthy people are there? What is a true definition of healthy for these people? How is it changing across city to city, geography to geography? Another very big challenge, which we practically is very difficult to solve. So the solution, the scientific solution to all of this is large amounts of data. When we say large amounts of data, and the biomarkers like genomics and microbiomics and epigenomics, these are not cheap to do, right? So automatically the cost is so high, then there's an R&D budget and everything. So these are all the issues that we get with science, right? Of course, now the complexity is very high, right? Now with aging, it's so personalized. It's me and you are aging quite differently. Let's say, Sanjukta, you meet a friend who is exactly the same age of you, right? How much of a difference is there between both of you? So yeah, so the inter-individual challenge is so much. Imagine a country like India, right? So that's the biggest scientific challenge. Geopolitical challenges, I think the Indian government is really looking at it. We think that they're not doing anything, but a lot of good folks, I mean, I would not say a particular party or such, I'm not like that. I would just simply keep it to the right bodies that should do the right things for science. They are looking at it. So there has been a recent initiative from Indian Institute of Sciences called Longevity India, where they're aggregating all the philanthropers, the academicians, the industry, and the government. So it's incubation groups like these which are going to drive the policy around these, how the intervention should be regulated and how the diagnostic should be regulated. Very important step, I would say. And I think it's massive. India is going to reap a lot out of this Longevity India project. So I think on geopolitical side, people are looking at it. There's some wonderful NGOs, Help Age India. There's a LASI, Longitudinal Aging Studies of India. Wonderful people. Another interesting group you should be looking at is the age tech founders, people who are, easing the life of, after the 60 or 65, post retirement. They're making their life easy. They're adding the social element, which is very important for longevity, right?
For start, I mean, I know about the Indian Institute of Science Longevity India initiative, but I didn't know Age Tech is another startup like yours, or
Age Tech is a group of startups, right? I would, if I have to, I mean, I don't remember all of them, but I know some really wonderful, wonderful founders in that area. I mean, everyone else works for money, but as soon as I meet these few people, right, who are doing startups in this range, there's real passion, there's heart involved in the thing. I mean, lovely folks. So I think one is Neeraj Sagar, who is doing Wisdom Circle, who is helping post-retirement people who are still active mentally and physically to get some jobs for them at that age. So he's facilitating that. Yeah.
Let me take it down. Neeraj Sagar, right?
Yeah, Neeraj Sagar.
Name
Yeah.
of his
It's a Wisdom Circle. Wisdom Circle.
okay.
Yeah. So he's trying to define this a generation of people after 65 as the wisdom generation instead of the old generation. What a beautiful thing to tell, you know. So really, really good person. I mean, great heart at what he is doing. There's a wonderful woman called Nidhi Chawla. She has been running Silver Talkies. She's creating the social engagement platforms for, elderly communities. Again,
Okay.
wonderful. Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, the others I don't remember, but I know the work that they're doing. So someone is solving for the pensions, to ease a senior's life while getting the pensions. I think there's
Okay.
one Tata supported group called Goodfellas who are providing home care for elders. Uh,
That I
yeah.
know.
Yeah. So I think after this call, I'll drop you all of these names. I think there's a very beautiful sector
Sure.
of startups in India called Age Tech, and they're solving for this very niche problem of elders, whatever they face.
Right.
I think there's a
Mm.
Primus Life Spaces, which is like a high-tech old age home kind of a thing where the medical services and all is kind of provided. I think it's
Okay.
it's run by Adarsh. Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
So, Rashid, it seems like this is almost like the beginning of a revolution in India. It feels like
Pretty
that.
much.
It's a very
Mhm.
expansive project, I guess, to combine all these efforts. But I think, do you feel convinced that in the next decade we will see a lot of results and we will see longevity as a reality in India?
I'm saying next 5 years, not 10 years. Because the growth of awareness, because we track data regularly, what's happening in the market, the growth of awareness is immense. And I mean, there's
Mm.
going to be some one. So because we know on the back end that what are the things under stealth right now, there's going to be in the next 2 3 years all these things are going to start coming out, and then the
Right.
way. So I think we are going to break the Moore's law in for longevity in India. So we are easily
Okay.
going to break that, and I think in the next 5 years the awareness will be at peak. I do
Mhm.
understand that very specific technologies coming out from India for longevity, for Indians, that would take 10 years at least. But yeah, in 5 years, I think we'll be understanding this field better as a whole country than anyone else.
Yeah, yeah. Darshit, lastly, can you give me an idea of the amount of money that this kind of process requires? Can you like a roughly any kind of an estimate? I just idea to know. Say, supposing a 65-year-old person who's aging and feeling aging comes to
Mhm.
you and help me. What can he or she expect to pay for
Right.
this
I
process?
mean, see, it's a very difficult question to be honest, because I think things like these should be accessible to everyone. It's just
Yeah.
that the amount of access to certain technologies will reduce. You can start at
Mm.
65. You can do very basic, good, scientifically backed health paradigms, which would not cost you more than 2,000, 3,000 rupees a month, right? You can start there and still improve 20, 25, 30% itself,
Mm.
but then if
Yeah.
you want to have advanced diagnostics, extreme personalization and everything, then you would
Yeah.
have to be ready to spend about 7 to 10,000 a month. This is
Oh,
beyond your regular gym membership or something like that. So I think
right.
that's the limit. It's not massively expensive. People get scared. They would be like, it would charge me lakhs and crores of rupees. It's not actually that expensive. things are
Okay.
things are very simple. Things could be done. It gets
Yeah.
expensive when you're constantly making unwise choices. What
Mhm.
people do as of today, oh, I
Right.
saw this interesting supplement, let me buy it and put it. Oh, I saw this
Mm.
interesting test, let me go and get it done. If you're going to
Mm.
do that, you're going to be spending money, okay, a
Mm.
lot of money without any real help to your biology. But I think if
Right.
you're going to an expert, if you're getting a paradigm design, if you're talking to someone, if a nutritionist or a doctor helps you out, or if someone like even researchers can help you out, right? You'll be spending the right money and optimizing the right in the right way. So I think that's
Mm.
the gap as well. People do a lot of experimental things, end up spending a lot of money when there is a
Mm.
proper way to achieve it, and they don't spend on that. So I think it's about that.
Yeah. Okay. That's the last thing I think I forgot to ask you is, so is there in this process, is there also a mental emotional aspect to it? Because whatever I've read so far, it says connection, sense of community, no isolation, being happy is a huge factor in living longer and better.
Right, right. No, so I would put it very simply, the most important things for longevity are, some pillars are there. So you have to think of it from a very, let's say, ancient Indian kind of a perspective, right? When we talk about ancient India, the general philosophy was that, or ancient India or China or Japan, anywhere, the general philosophy was that this body is a physical matter, okay, which is the biology of it. There's a mental matter, right, which is what's happening in your brain, not the brain itself, the mind part of it. And people say in different words, but the soul, so I
Yeah.
also believe for longevity, everything should be at Zen. Okay.
Mm.
I'm not a big believer or follower of all these practices, but I believe there's a solid, essence to this theory that your psychological, your social, your physical, and your mental health. If four are not in congruence, you are never truly happy or,
Mm.
enjoying your life. And if you're not enjoying your life, you will not like to extend it. So
Yeah.
yeah, because I could be the healthiest person in my life, but if I don't have friends, if I don't have family, if I'm not having that one laugh a day, I'll be in a very depressive state. You will see it on my face, right? The same is for the psychological health. If you're not at peace with yourself and your surroundings, it's gonna affect you. And we think that it is mental affection. It is not. It affects your physical body. The biochemistry clearly says that when you're hugging someone, when you're kissing someone, you have that release of oxytocin, so that this is all biochemical. It's not really soul per se. But I think, yeah, the four: social, psychological, mental, and physical health, the four should be at congruence. One cannot be better than the other.
All right. This was a very informative conversation. Thank you so much for your time, Darshit. We will